Welcome to Mean Age Daydream with me, Brian McWilliams, where we're going to be making some jokes, laughing out at broken world, but also laying out some philosophy for the future, how we can fix this mess we're in and have a great time doing it all with a Mean Age Daydream. Hello, my sweet sugar beets. It is I, Brian McWilliams, back once again. Waited a little bit, so this podcast is coming out a little later today, and of course the live stream than usual, because I wanted to see last night's Trump versus Harris ABC debate, debacle, whatever you want to call it, as I've titled the episode, Clatter on a Platter, delivered by the hack moderators at ABC, as this was one of the more biased, really repulsively so, biased moderating jobs I think I've ever seen in a debate. But we will get into all that. It is exclusively what this episode is going to be about today. And it's funny, John Odermatt, of course, on Finding Freedom, had did my initial idea for this episode, which was to break down her brand new policy platform, which just got published to the website. Yes, only 2 months left before the actual, less than 2 months before the actual election, and Kamala Harris has finally put her policy platforms up on the website. I am curious to see what John said. I haven't had a listen yet, and of course to review them, because she is a notorious liar. She has flip-flopped on positions. One of the things that was gently raised last night, and of course didn't answer the question. And yeah, anyway, we'll get into all that. But before we do, guys, if you would be so kind, please hit subscribe. Go subscribe to the audio podcast. Hit the notify button. Hit the little alarm bell, because we are shadow banned on YouTube. If you're watching on Rumble, great. Subscribe to the channel. And if you want more, like our gambling show, Degenerate Gamblers, like my morning rant show, like, for example, Secrets, Lies, and Cover-Ups, well, go and subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com. And yes, now that I am finally back from traveling, my parents are no longer in town, I am going to be able to finish up the Do Nothing Man Libertarian Superhero. So that is also forthcoming for our paying subscribers. The rest of you will get that way down the line. All right, so let's get into it here. And apologies, my voice is a little scratchy. I think I picked up a little something over the weekend, but whatever. You live the good life. This is the price you pay. So getting into this ABC debate, I'll give you just a general thought to kick it off. And that was that going into this, Donald Trump needed to maintain his composure against what is a definitively a very annoying person. Kamala Harris is obnoxious. Now, granted, look, Donald Trump can be unbelievably annoying too. If you don't like Donald Trump, and many people don't, I find him entertaining personally, then he is going to come across as obnoxious as hell. Kamala Harris, I think, universally is obnoxious as hell. Those people that claim to like her, claim to support her, I don't believe them. I don't think it's possible to like this woman. I frankly think that she has gotten a reputation among some crowds, the Democrat circle, for telling it like it is. But then you see how fake she is, how obnoxious her smile is, her laugh is, her general, just everything about her way of speaking, her body language. She is somebody that is so definitively unlikable. One of the reasons why she was eliminated with 0%, I mean, literally less than 1% of the vote in the Democratic primaries, and dropped out because everyone hates her. Now, in this debate performance, she came across in the same way. And I even tweeted out that she had taken on the typical Kamala smug smile, this very condescending kind of, I don't even know. You can't call it resting bitch face, because it's not. It's more just like a resting face that says, I am pretending, I'm trying my hardest to let you know that I'm amused because I'm so much better than you. It's not a good look. It's not a good look. And it was interesting to see, because Donald Trump during this debate really went out of his way not to even look at her, not to, I think intentionally so, not to engage and not to give her the time of day, I guess doing his own version of "you're not worth my time." The problem was, and this partially is due to the moderators being so in the bag. As I said, the clatter on a platter, the platter they held out for Kamala Harris to make her look better as a speaker, as a, essentially, Kamala Harris is not good extemporaneously. She does not have the best brain when it comes to answering basic questions. But when you have the moderators basically gift wrap everything for you and couch questions in such a way that they are aggressive towards Donald Trump, I mean, essentially tweeting out, I tweeted this out too. There was a question, and let me see if I can find it. There was a question specifically where they laid out why Trump was a horrible POS in the question that was asked. So Kamala Harris didn't have to do any of the work here. The moderators had framed the question, the debate question, to paint Trump as an asshole before anybody even got to answer. So Donald Trump, by comparison to Harris, looks like he was off his game, like he was more of a blustery, kind of raving, like he was the one getting upset. And he was, to be clear, the last debate that he had versus Joe Biden, Trump had to come in and his goal, I'm sure his team told him this, we had all kind of said this in advance, his goal was to maintain composure, let Joe Biden be Joe Biden. And it worked to a T. Joe Biden was disconjointed, discombobulated. He was showcasing how his brain was non-functional. He was showcasing all the flubs, the missteps, the, Joe Biden's kind of fallback move. And you saw this during his DNC speech and basically all of his speeches now when he's actually not just sitting on the beach, which Trump hit on several times during the debate. Where is Joe Biden? He's basically quit his job. So Biden, when his default setting is triggered, just kind of yells for no good reason. In this Joe Biden way, you can't understand half the words he's saying, but he just defaults to that. Trump, unfortunately, in this situation, lost his composure. He should have come in with the exact same modus operandi, which is let Kamala Harris beat herself. Prod her where you need to prod her, point out where she is falling short, point out that she is, at one point it was ridiculous. She had said that Donald Trump, and this was like one of the worst moments of the debate for Kamala Harris. She tried to make it into a mic drop moment. But Kamala Harris goes, hey, let me just remind you, you're not debating Biden, you're debating me. And then she gave it like a pause as though that meant anything, as though she's not literally still the vice president of the country under Joe Biden. It's the Biden-Harris ticket. That's who's in the administration. And yet Trump's supposedly not debating Joe Biden or the policies of Biden. He's debating Kamala Harris. Absolutely stupid moment. She looked like a jackass. And it shows you Kamala Harris does not have any understanding of how to play a room. You've seen the number of awkward times she thinks she's making a statement, and then everybody just goes, what? What? Same thing when the Palestinian protesters were outside of one of her events. And she said, again, some stupid thing that got shared on a viral moment, but just made her look awful, made her look incompetent, made her look like she had no kindness in her heart, which I don't think she does. Anyway, Donald Trump lost his cool during this. He did not have a good debate. Flat out, period. Now, I'll go through some of the points here, but in general, he lost the bead, which was let Harris beat herself, allow her to look like the most unlikable doofus in the room, which she is, and keep your cool. He lost it. Now, why? Let's go into it. So kicking off, Donald Trump, they talk about the economy. They talk about Trump's tariff plan. He goes off, one of his worst moments of the night, talking about tariffs as though these things are not just taxes on the public, which they are. He's citing that somehow these things are going to come back around. Now, the one good point he made was that Kamala Harris attacks his tariffs, and she yet did nothing to take them out of their administrative. They under the Biden-Harris administration, and Trump made this point, if there's such bad tariffs that Trump put into place, why are they still there 3.5 years later? That's actually a very salient point. They shouldn't be there either way, but it's a very salient point. And Trump, of course, goes out of his way to defend that. We get into talking about immigration right off the bat. Great thing, right? Because immigration is one of the topics that we need to address. It's one of the top two concerns Americans have. It's been inflation. It's been immigration, right? So talking about that, Trump is talking about how Millions and millions of people are coming into the country. This is one of the few places where they actually pushed on Kamala Harris and gave her some pushback on why they had let so many people into the border, right? This is one of two one of two questions I could count that were addressed to Kamala Harris in a manner that would have been behooving of a legitimate debate rather than a DNC jerk-off fest. So Trump talks about how these immigrants coming in are taking away from union members' jobs, right? Of course, that's a little bit of a, an ass kissing by Trump, but this is politics after all. Taking away from minorities like black workers, like Hispanic workers that are in the country legally. And he's not wrong there. And this is kind of comes around to the great replacement theory. This is one that Tucker Carlson had gotten in a big fight with. I think it was an Australian member of the media. And he's been miscategorized here. But an Australian member of the media where she had said, well, you're going out of your way to talk about how, American citizens are being replaced by, minorities and blah, blah, blah. And he said, no, I'm not. Or I'm sorry. She said white Americans were being replaced, right? Because the media is misconstruing great replacement as just minorities coming in and replacing white people in general. When you're talking about it in a economic perspective, they're talking about jobs being taken by immigrants of different races, different colors. And Tucker Carlson has said, well, yeah, I'm not talking about white people. I'm talking about everybody. So to Trump's point here, when you do have illegals coming in to this extent, I can see that, yeah, they're going to take jobs away from everybody. And if you're talking about lower economic status groups, obviously, illegals coming in are going to take away those jobs before they're going to take away your average guy that's voting for Kamala Harris, a white boy for Harris, that's going to be sitting at his laptop, entering data into a spreadsheet. So that was fun. Now, the thing that really aggravated me was they did mention to Kamala Harris, because Trump brought it up specifically, right? And this is, again, they probably wouldn't have brought this up if Trump didn't specifically cite it. Said, hey, on the border, you guys haven't done jack until the last 6 months. They pressed her on that. Of course, what does Harris do? Doesn't answer the question in any way, shape, or form. Kamala Harris did the same thing at least 4 times that I could count in this debate. And at no point in time did the moderators step in and try to get her back on track, which they did for Trump numerous times, by the way. They would go out of her way. Kamala Harris would go out of her way to mention the first thing that was brought up, right? In this case, the border. There were numerous other words. Like, let me see. What was another one? I can't. I'm sorry. I'm looking through my notes, but I can't find it right here. So they would ask her a pointed question. Kamala Harris would bring it up, address half a note of it. Again, the border. Well, the border. So Kamala Harris was touching on the border. She goes, well, the border issue, I have been a prosecutor and the border issue when I was in California dealing with these human trafficking and transnational crime groups. Now, she has used this same bullshit tactic in every single interview when asked about the border. At no point in time does it address the actual question of why they allowed millions and millions of immigrants to come across the border until the last 6 months before the election, when they decided to crack down because it was becoming such an unpopular political position, and one that was indefensible as cities are overrun, especially sanctuary cities that didn't think it was a problem, right? These virtue signaling, Chicago, New York, LA, you name it. Minnesota, these cities that had said, oh, well, it's not a problem, right? Until it was a problem, until they got all those millions of immigrants. And now, to cite Eric Adams in New York City, they're spending $5 billion just to take care of these mass waves of immigrants. Well, welcome to the party, pal. So Kamala, instead of answering the question, says the word border, then goes on to talk about how she was working with these transnational criminal gangs and prosecuting them and stopping fentanyl, blah, 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 blah. Now, what we know is that a portion of these these millions and millions of immigrants, sure, are members of transnational criminal organizations and are involved in human trafficking and fentanyl. Fuck, I live in LA. The amount of gangs that have sprung up here, the numerous amount of MS-13 and you name it, that are here illegally crossing the border definitely speak to the transnational gangs. The problem is, number one, she didn't do a good job on that either. Number two, That doesn't address the fucking problem of the border. It doesn't answer why you didn't do anything to enforce the border. It doesn't even come close to answering the question. The moderators do not press her on it at all. None of the media presses her on this at all. They let her get away with it. They let her get away with it again in this. Doesn't answer the question. You picking apples in that tree while the orange tree over here is overrun with beetles and bugs and locusts or whatever it might be, doesn't mean that you're good at dealing with the problem of the locusts. It means you picked a few apples over there. It was fucking pissing me off to watch it. It makes you angry every time. So that was one thing. Then we get into the pandemic, right? They get questioned about the pandemic, which is good. Trump, obviously, he missed an opportunity here to bring up the handling that California did during the pandemic and how California is a cesspool compared to the rest of the nation in many ways. And this is Kamala Harris was a senator here. Gavin Newsom, who was a big DNC supporter, thought he might have a shot at the presidency, is still the governor here for now, and has run the state into the ground. Now, part of this was the COVID response. California, Michigan, a couple of states, New York, had some of the most draconian, authoritarian COVID responses, shutting down schools for extended period of time, the shitty teachers union here, keeping that going, insisting that they wouldn't go back to schools, ruining kids' education, highest dropout rates in the country, highest failure rates in the country. So Trump missed an opportunity here to really crack down and talk about failures by Democrats and Democrat leadership during COVID. Instead, what does Trump do? And this is something that he's done several times, defends his actions during COVID. Says that he handled the pandemic wonderfully. Donald, COVID was a fuck up across every single sector. The only people that handled COVID well were the few red state governors that stood up and told everybody to F themselves like Ron DeSantis did. Now, granted, initially, he had gone along with it. Everybody initially went along with it because nobody knew what we were dealing with, right? I even hear, on our channel, saying, we don't know if the stats are correct. If this thing is as deadly as the Spanish flu, then yeah, maybe we should take a week. Give it a week, and then get back to normal. Once it became very apparent that this thing didn't work, that ventilators didn't work and were killing people, that forcing vaccines in and working with these big pharma companies to essentially give them complete immunity, which is now being rescinded in certain international domains, they're giving them complete immunity to push out a vaccine that didn't work. Well, you probably shouldn't be taking credit for that. You shouldn't be taking credit for the first round of payments that went out that caused some of this inflation that was then continued and exacerbated by the Bidens. And by the way, Kamala Harris, later on in this debate, she goes and talks about her economic plan and how 19 Nobel laureates had said that this plan was going to be one of the great plans. It's going to reduce inflation. And then she's talking about, too, the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act was all it was a climate change bill in wolf's clothing or sheep's clothing here, a wolf in sheep's clothing that did nothing to impact inflation. In fact, made it worse because if you're talking about more expenses, spending a fucking $1 trillion on climate change initiatives that create bullshit nothing jobs, which make everything more expensive, well, it's going to do the opposite than relates to inflation, right? Of course it is. But she's harping on this as though it's a good thing. And also, these Nobel laureates, I just want everybody out there to know, Nobel Prizes don't mean anything anymore. They used to back in the day. Now it's purely political. Same thing with Pulitzer Prizes. It's a joke. And of these 19 Nobel laureates, something like 13 or 16 of them actually backed the 1.9 trillion stimulus that they put out there. I don't even call it a stimulus. The fuck you stay at home payments they put out into the world that caused all this massive inflation. And what did these Nobel laureate economists say? Oh, that it wouldn't cause inflation. So these people are supposed to be believed? Of course, your average moron watching this debate probably will just nod their head and go along with it. Just like when they threw out as I said, the information for the slow egg people out there at the end about climate change and how, this is an issue to wrap up this debate. That's when I turned it off. I was over it. But they throw out these garbage topics. Circling back to the COVID topic. So Trump's taking credit stupidly for his actions during the pandemic. And then Kamala Harris starts talking about how China, and China, well, his relations with China. Donald Trump said that China was doing a good job on it. Again, stupid for Trump. But Kamala Harris is talking about how China got all this credit from Donald Trump for helping to do the right thing. And then she's saying, and we know that China lied to us about the origins of COVID. Kamala, your fucking administration lied about the origins of COVID. Anthony Fauci, who was a continuation from Donald Trump, who had given him an award, by the way. Again, Donald, distance yourself from this. Anthony Fauci lied to the American public about COVID. The Biden and Harris administration censored information about COVID, worked directly with social media companies to censor information about the Wuhan lab theory. And you're saying that Donald Trump is working with China to cover up the origins of COVID? I mean, are you fucking kidding? Are you fucking kidding? Did the moderators step in and say anything? Of course they did. Of course they didn't. Why would they mention any of the facts we now know? Why would they mention censorship? Which, by the way, I didn't see it. Maybe it came up in the last minute I missed of this debate. I didn't see any questions about censorship. One of the primary topics that is in our world right now, and these hack moderators don't bring it up. Maybe under the guise of Brazil banning X in that country and threatening $9,000 fines for anybody trying to use a VPN. Maybe the fact that the European Union is at war with Elon Musk and trying to censor their own content from people being able to access and freely dialogue. Maybe the United Kingdom arresting people for memes. Maybe that should bring up the concept of censorship, which was so rampant under Biden and Harris, and their talk about extremists' threats. Well, maybe we should fucking talk about that during this debate. Maybe the fact that Donald Trump was kicked off X and fucking Facebook as president. You don't think this is a good idea to talk about where you fall on free speech? Oh, no, you don't want to do that because Kamala Harris is on record saying that Elon Musk has to be reined in, that free speech has to be reined in, that there has to be censorship, and so is her little fucking ass clown, Tim Walz. Tim Walz recently is on record talking about how free speech isn't free and we have to rein in hate speech and we have to rein in misinformation and all this other garbage. Don't forget, Harris Biden had a misinformation czar in place. Why would we want to talk about that, right? It's only one of the biggest topics, the biggest issues in our world right now. Nah. Now, let's talk about how it was inappropriate for Donald Trump to talk about Kamala Harris's race. That was one of the questions. That was actually one of the specifics I was thinking of. The moderators were so in the bag for Harris. I mean, one of the prime examples of this was them bringing up a question. And again, this is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard in a presidential debate. The question was, Donald, do you think you had brought up that you just recently read that Kamala Harris was black and that she became black? Do you think it's appropriate to talk about another candidate's race? This is a debate question. This is an attack question. This is a question specifically created, written, and delivered in order to make Trump have to get on the defensive and to give Kamala Harris a platform to then go on and yakety schmack about race and how Donald Trump's a racist, even though there's no evidence that Donald Trump's a racist. That she can talk about that, and she can talk about how he's a criminal, and you talk about all this lawfare. And then, of course, we know the people that have been pushing divisiveness within race, the people that have been pushing finger pointing, because she's saying that Donald Trump is finger pointing on race. In what world do the Democrats in the DNC not do all of the finger pointing when it comes to race? From the best of my knowledge, Tim Walz did a lot of finger pointing about race and did nothing during the George Floyd riots, let his city burn to the ground while arresting, malcontents over with this, that, and the other, arrest people for having barbecues during COVID, but lets the city burn. Kamala Harris went and tweeted out a fundraiser to bail out BLM activists, protesters, violent thugs, Antifa members during that. And yet she's saying that Donald Trump is doing finger pointing about race. The DNC solely exists to create racial division now because there's nothing else but climate change and race bullshit that they have to run on anymore. Oh, and Donald Trump. That's it. And yet you get a softball bullshit made to order question thrown out there by ABC's hack moderators. I mean, it was truly pathetic. I will say Kamala Harris, even though she is full of garbage and full of lies on abortion, again, no fact checking under the abortion topic when it was raised, because they asked Donald Trump about the 6-week abortion law. He has been bad on that. He's flip-flopped kind of back and forth, whether he would sign it, whether he wouldn't sign it, whether he would sign it. Now he's recommitted to signing it. But of course, he defended the fact that Roe v. Wade, it pushed it back to the states, which is exactly where it should be. Nothing about abortion was ever in the Constitution until they forced it in there in a very questionable Supreme Court decision. And it's perfectly fine with me that it went back to the states. I think that's how it should be. But they're talking about abortion. Naturally, Kamala Harris, this is the one thing she can really kind of go off about, right? If there's one thing she sounds remedially competent on, it is abortion, even though she is lying half the time. For example, Donald Trump accurately categorized the Democrat National Party as being okay with taking abortions very late into term for babies and without medical reason. This was something that was on record in Virginia. This is something that was on record in New York City. This is something that Tim Walz has been on record supporting. And yet Kamala lies about it, says that that's not true at all, yada, yada, yada. No fact checking whatsoever. But I'll give her credit. It's the one thing she can talk about extemporaneously, although I'm sure she's got it all memorized by rote now anyway, without sounding like a complete moron, even if she is a liar. How about this one? This really cracked me up. There's the old blow the drummer, Joe the plumber. It's a trope, right? It's trotted out. Well, my friend Joe the plumber, he's voting for Democrats and he's a good old working boy, right? Well, there's a new Joe the plumber trope that Kamala Harris has rolled out for abortion. And it's apparently that, these working moms who desperately need abortions are out there. And it's just so expensive and so inconvenient for working mothers. They're crying about abortions. One of the more ridiculous moments of the night. Just wanted to mention it because it was so fucking cringy. I also wanted to mention just talking about we're good old boys. There was a point during this debate. Actually, you know what? Hold on. The boys at Good Morning Liberty, who of course we are fond of, they had a good tweet that they put out with a video because Kamala Harris was pushed on her views changing at one point. Now, she had lied blatantly about her support for fracking. Kamala Harris 100% said she would ban fracking. Kamala Harris 100% has said she is, and don't forget, she is one of the most liberal/progressive senators, hard left senators. We have her voting record that has ever been in the Senate by far. She said she would ban fracking. She is against it. Now, of course, she has flip-flopped on that. And this is very recently. Zero pushback. She just blatantly lies about it. One of the other things that she blatantly lied about too, when this was raised a little bit later in the debate, and again, this is raised specifically by Donald Trump. So, not the moderators, by Donald Trump. One of the few times trans came up was that Donald Trump mentioned that Kamala Harris, being such a progressive psychopath, was in favor of illegal immigrants getting sex changes on the lawmaker's dime. This is 100% true. She was 100% in favor of it. She gave a speech to the the ACLU and their union, which I didn't even know the ACLA had a union. I guess, of course, they would, right? They're, again, a left-wing activist organization now. But saying specifically she was in support of that policy. Naturally, she lies about it. The moderators probably don't even know to fact check her, but another lie gotten away with. But here's a good one about guns, because Kamala Harris said that she and good old Coach Tim Walz were both proud gun owners, and of course, they would never think about taking away people's gun rights. Well, here is a side-by-side.
This business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff.
I support buybacks, and it's something I'm so passionate about and so looking forward to being president to address. We've got to deal with this.
How mandatory is your gun buyback program?
It's mandatory.
Stop with the
There you go. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Proud gun owners. Just stop with the guns. Stop with the anti-gun stuff, right? We love guns. Yeah, okay. Okay. Right. No fact checking, no pushback from the moderators. Now, it was funny too. A great example of just how completely in the can biased ABC was for Kamala Harris was pointed out by Stephen Miller, who, let me share this as my screen goes away, and I'll read to you this exact tweet. Now, this is the only one I saw of this. Of course, nothing like this for Donald Trump. But he says, ABC News, the network currently hosting this debate, is now creating quotes and memes of one of the candidates on stage. They did this. I haven't looked to see if they created any more for Donald Trump, but this was the only one I saw as of an hour into the debate from ABC News Politics. In their first debate, Vice President Kamala Harris warns of dangerous plans of Project 2025, which, of course, she was going to bring up that crap, and vows to be a president for all Americans. And then we read the meme, and this is literally a fucking meme they made. It has ABC News presidential debate. It has a picture of Kamala Harris. It says, I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge you to be a president for all Americans, Kamala Harris. That is a fucking propaganda meme created by a quote unquote news outlet in the middle of the debate. In the middle of the debate. They created this crap to show you how in the bag they were for Harris. And as I mentioned earlier, Kamala Harris did this repeatedly. And this is where Trump did fail. He failed in this debate because he didn't go into how he was more of an inspirational president. He got a little bit lost in the bluster. He got a little lost in his defending his ego. And Kamala baited him into that. Right? She did a good job baiting him into, oh, well, you know, this and that. Oh, they're shipping in people to go to her rallies and they're voting. Okay. Nobody gives a fuck. Nobody gives a fuck, Trump. But this crap, Kamala Harris, you know, again, they would ask, when they did, rarely ask her a question where she was not going to have a good answer, because she doesn't have good answers on anything, really. But when they'd ask her something that pointed out how she was a failure, how her policies have flip-flopped, how the Biden and Harris administrations have failed America repeatedly, she would mention some crap and then go into happy talk just like this. Bullshit happy talk, because she doesn't have enough up here to actually answer the question. She instead would pivot and go, I just think the American people need a president that loves them, that is going to bring people together, that stands with us. She did this no fewer than 4 times. At no point did the moderator demand that she come back and answer the question. They simply let her get away with happy talk crap. So let's see here. What else? Coming back to the end, I did make a note that they talked about the fine people hoax once again. The Democrats can't get past this. The Charlottesville fine people hoax. Of course, they had to talk about January 6th. The moderators had to bring that up because we haven't talked about that for the last 4 years, right? Everybody needs to talk about January 6th. So they brought that up. Again, serve that on the platter to Harris. Then Harris goes into the fine people hoax. Talks about Charlottesville, even though Charlottesville is even farther back. Talks about how Trump said there were fine people on both sides, something that, and Donald Trump had mentioned this. Again, I don't think he did a great job defending it. All he had to say was, there is video. I was talking about people taking down Confederate statues. That's all he had to say. Instead, he goes and talks about how, you know, I don't know, different Fox News people had debunked it. But the moderators could very easily debunk it. It's on video. Donald Trump never said there were fine people on both sides in the Charlottesville Nazi rally in any way, and they're still getting away with this crap. It's beyond aggravating. And it wasn't the only lie. She lied about, you know, 5 or 6 other things as well that have been thoroughly debunked. Oh, she brought up, of course, the what did Trump say? Something about the car industries. There was some stupid phrase that he said about the car industry. It would be destructing, I don't know, blow up or something like that. And Kamala Harris again uses that. Well, he said this violent thing about this. And he's like, no, he's talking about how the car industry is going to implode. Just a jerk off fest for these moderators doing absolutely nothing. Trump had a funny moment when you're talking about the immigration stuff again and the sex worker policies. Kamala Harris tried to interrupt Trump, and it was pretty funny when he said, excuse me, I'm talking now. Does that sound familiar? Funniest moment of the entire debate. Oh, Donald Trump also brought up that he was shot in the head because of the rhetoric that Democrats had used, because Kamala Harris, just like Joe Biden, had again brought up a threat to democracy reference. The moderators cut him off. Can't have Donald Trump bringing up that he was shot in the fucking head. Can't allow that, right? Not important. That's not important to the debate. January 6th, important to the debate. Talking about Kamala's race, important to the debate. Getting shot in the head. No, doesn't matter. Not important. Can't let people be reminded of that. Both of these jerk-offs are into arming and supporting Israel, so nothing's changed there. Kamala Harris said that we would be rebuilding Gaza, though. That was an interesting tidbit. And I tweeted out, oh, we are going to be rebuilding Gaza, just like we are going to be rebuilding Ukraine. For Ukraine, there's already contracts in place for, I think it's either Citi or Chase Bank. And of course, some of the bigger companies, Halliburton's are, I'm sure, in there. The Blackwater gang will be in there helping out. So that, I'm sure, was not a slip of the tongue. America, we will be rebuilding Gaza. We will be paying for fucking that bullshit. American taxpayers, no bid contracts from these big companies that are going there just like they always do. Thought that was a fun tidbit to share. I do want to talk about the war in Ukraine. Kamala Harris doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on her being a fucking neocon shill for the military-industrial complex, for the elites. It's why she's where she is. It's why they picked her. It's why there wasn't a primary nor any debate. It's why she has gotten a free pass from the majority of the press, right? It's not just that she's a Democrat shill. It's that she is a deep state military-industrial complex shill. Don't ever forget it. And she, of course, recommitted for the United States to defend Ukraine and keep arming Ukraine and give them the tanks and give them the missiles and give them the drones and give them the money. Of course, for a war that has nothing to do with us, let's keep arming and supporting a war across the fucking world. And as Trump said, prodding a country under Russia and under Putin that is nuclear armed. And I'd said this in a previous episode. Let's not get that Putin, in my opinion at least, has actually been a fairly cool customer. Considering that NATO's at his doorstep, considering we put missiles everywhere and arms, and the Netherlands today just gave Ukraine all their weapons to use against the Russians to go into Russia with, which is supposed to be the red line, right? Where these are defensive weapons. Oh, no. You can go ahead, Ukrainians, use our weapons in Russia now. Great. I'm sure that'll go over well. But Trump points out that he just wants the war to end, that this man is nuclear armed, that Russia is a nuclear powered country, and that, don't forget, guys, Putin may not be there forever. You keep poking this fucking bear. You keep encroaching on Russia. There may come a time where Putin's not the guy in charge, and we don't know who the next person is. You fucking morons. So maybe take a step back. But no, not Kamala Harris. She wants to keep pushing ahead, full bore, go full neocon. What a piece of garbage. Trump is vastly better on foreign policy. Not to defend the drone bombs that he dropped, not to defend his actions in Yemen with Saudi Arabia. But as far as this crap, there is one very clear which way we should go. And then, all right, I'll wrap this up. My throat's starting to go out of me. Oh, also, by the way, if you're wondering why Kamala Harris got the Dick Cheney endorsement, that's why, right? Out and out military industrial complex shill. And then we talked about, just to wrap this up, climate change nonsense. Who fucking cares? But they did talk about affordable care and health insurance. And Kamala Harris lying once again, saying that she's all about private health insurance, even though she's not. She is a socialist. She is a Marxist. Donald Trump had a nice line talking about how her father was a economist, but he was also a Marxist, and she got taught well by him. That was a good line. She is a fucking socialist. She is a fucking Marxist. Her voting record shows this. Her opinions on healthcare were to get everybody into universal government-funded healthcare. She says she wants to promote private insurance, and we have to expand the Affordable Care Act. Of course, the Affordable Care Act, again, absolutely misnamed, has made everything more expensive. Sure, some people get access for pre-existing conditions. I see that. I acknowledge that. Still made everything more expensive for everybody else. Flat out, period. Can't deny it. Astronomically expensive. People's healthcare insurance policies change all the time. I know I've had to change mine 3 to 5 times. They lie to your face about what benefits you're going to get. You keep your doctor. It's horse shit. Meanwhile, the transparency is still not there in the medical industry. You still had to have free competition between states. It's a fucking joke. Donald Trump, I don't know what his plan is specifically. I just feel like it's got to be better. Maybe that's just me talking out of my ass. It is, since I don't know exactly what he's proposing, but the Affordable Care Act is a fucking failure across the board, unless you happen to be one of the few people that is in the vast minority in this country that gets the benefit while the rest of us get all the risk and all the expense. That was about it. That's about it. That's all my thoughts. It was a joke. It was a hard debate to watch. It was insulting. If you're not completely already on board with Kamala Harris to watch these moderators, I think probably they were the worst moderators I've ever watched. I think maybe, actually, I take that back. There might have been one NBC sponsored debate last cycle where the Telemundo, it was like a female Telemundo or a moderator that was taking part. She was also so over the top anti-Trump as to just come across as a complete clown and a joke. But both of the moderators tonight really gave her a run for their money. It was one of the more transparent, almost CNN levels of transparent. The last cycle where Hillary Clinton was given the questions in advance, it felt like that because Harris was not challenged at any point in time. They let her get away with murder. They get away with lying, to get away with, as I said, happy talk, bullshit answers without actually addressing the real question being posed. Never got pressed to come back and answer a question. And of course, questions written distinctly to put Donald Trump in a hole and serve up softball home runs for Harris the entire debate. Just a brutal affair. So I don't know. I think they've got another one scheduled. I guess I got to watch it because that's part of the game here, but that was a unbearable slog. So if you feel like thanking me for my time and effort here, again, guys, please do subscribe. What I'd really love to, I have another show. It's a comedy show. I do it with Rico, who of course is another Lion of Liberty, and my buddy Donnie, who is libertarian as well. We review the first episodes of TV shows. We do one old one, a classic like a Seinfeld, and we combine it with a brand new one. Last week we did American Gladiators. It was great, and a Netflix show called Eric, which sucked balls. But that's the idea, right? So please go check it out. The first episode podcast. You can find it anywhere podcasts are heard, and I hope you will do us that kindness. Otherwise, subscribe to the channel here, subscribe to the podcast. All right, from me, Brian McWilliams, from the Lions of Liberty, and from Mean Age Daydream, keep those electric eyes on me, babe, and keep that ray gun to my head. Right.